An entitled Karen burst into my garage, accusing me of being a dangerous criminal with a gun. Little did she know it was just my power drill. What happened next was a heart-pumping experience with the cops that could have ended in tragedy. Here's what went down. Like the video right now and subscribe to You're the Jerk on YouTube for more stories just like this. It was a peaceful afternoon in my quiet suburban neighborhood. I was just doing some DIY work in my garage, using my trusty drill to fix a broken shelf. The sun was shining and the birds were chirping. It was the perfect day to get some work done. But then, as if on cue, Karen appeared. Karen wasn't her real name, of course, but it's the one that everyone in the neighborhood had given her. She was known for being nosy and confrontational, the type of person who always seemed to be looking for a fight. From the day she arrived, Karen made it clear that she was not happy with her new surroundings. She complained about everything from the lack of streetlights to the quality of the local schools. Karen's abrasive personality quickly made her a source of annoyance for many of the other residents in the neighborhood. She was always getting into arguments with her neighbors about everything from parking to noise levels. Karen seemed to thrive on confrontation and was never one to back down from a fight. Despite her unpleasant nature, Karen seemed to have a lot of free time on her hands. She was often seen walking around the neighborhood looking for something to complain about. She would stop and talk to anyone who would listen, regaling them with tales of her latest disputes with her neighbors. Many of the other residents avoided her, but Karen didn't seem to care. She was determined to make her presence felt, whether people liked it or not. As I was working on fixing a broken shelf in my garage, I heard a loud commotion from outside. Suddenly, Karen burst in, screaming at the top of her lungs. I was startled and dropped my drill, which made a loud noise as it hit the concrete floor. Karen immediately mistook the drill for a gun and started accusing me of being a dangerous criminal. I tried to remain calm as Karen continued to yell at me, accusing me of being a dangerous criminal. "Karen, it's just a power tool," I said, trying to reason with her. "I'm not a threat to anyone's safety." But Karen wasn't listening. She was too busy shouting at me and making a scene. "I know what I saw," she said, her voice rising with each word. "You had a gun and you were going to use it on us." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was like Karen was living in a completely different reality. "Karen, please, you're mistaken," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "This is just a drill. Look." I held up the power tool, hoping that Karen would see reason. But she just scoffed and rolled her eyes. "I don't believe you," she said, her arms crossed over her chest. "You're just trying to cover your tracks. I'm calling the police." I knew I had to do something to stop her. I couldn't let her call the cops and make a false report against me. "Karen, please, listen to me," I said, taking a step closer to her. "I'm not a criminal. I'm just trying to fix a shelf in my garage. Can't we talk about this like reasonable adults?" But Karen wasn't interested in being reasonable. She just glared at me and reached for her phone. "I'll show you what happens to criminals like you," she said, dialing 911. I felt a sinking feeling in my stomach as I watched her talk to the operator. I knew that if the police showed up, things could get out of hand very quickly. I had to find a way to convince Karen that I wasn't a threat. But how? I could hear the sirens in the distance, growing louder with each passing moment. Karen was still on the phone, describing me to the operator in vivid detail. I could only imagine what she was saying about me. As I waited for the police to arrive, I tried to come up with a plan. I knew that I had to convince them that I wasn't a threat. But how? Before I could think of a solution, I heard the sound of approaching police cars. 2 patrol cars pulled up in front of my house, their lights flashing brightly in the afternoon sun. Karen immediately ran up to the officers and pointed at me. "That's him!" she shouted. "He's the one with the gun!" The police officers looked at me warily, their hands resting on their holsters. "Sir, put your hands up and step away from the drill," one of them said, his voice firm and commanding. I could feel my heart racing as I slowly raised my hands in the air. "Officers, please," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "This is just a power tool. I'm not a criminal." But the police officers weren't listening. They continued to keep their weapons trained on me, their eyes narrow and suspicious. "Step away from whatever the F that is and get down on the ground," the other officer said, his voice cold and unyielding. I knew that I had to comply with their orders if I wanted to avoid getting shot, so I slowly lowered myself to the ground, my hands still raised in the air. But as soon as I hit the ground, things quickly spiraled out of control. Karen continued to shout and scream, accusing me of being a dangerous criminal. The police officers seemed to be getting more and more agitated by the second, their weapons still trained on me. I felt like Adin Ross, or one of those streamers when they get swatted. My heart was pounding as I lay on the ground with my hands up, feeling like a criminal. Suddenly, I heard my wife's voice calling out from the front yard. "Excuse me, officers," she said, her voice calm and steady. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. That's just a power tool he's holding." The officers turned to face my wife, who was standing a few feet away from Karen. "Ma'am, please step back," one of them said, his tone brusque. "This is a dangerous situation. My husband was just fixing a shelf in the garage," my wife explained. "There's no need for all of this." The officers hesitated for a moment, then slowly lowered their weapons. "Are you sure?" one of them asked, eyeing the drill warily. My wife nodded. "I'm positive. He's not a criminal." The officers cautiously approached me, their hands on their holsters. "Sir, we need you to put down the tool and step away," one of them said. I complied, slowly placing the drill on the ground and raising my hands in the air. The officers quickly patted me down, checking for any weapons or other dangerous items. After the initial search, one of the officers began to examine the drill more closely. "This doesn't look like a gun," he said, his tone more curious than accusatory. The other officer looked at Karen, who was standing off to the side, looking increasingly nervous. "Ma'am, can you tell us what you saw?" he asked. Karen hesitated for a moment, then began to stammer out her story. "I saw him, with a gun," she said, her voice faltering, but the officers didn't seem convinced. They continued to examine the drill, turning it over in their hands and inspecting it from every angle. "Are you sure it was a gun?" one of them asked Karen, his voice skeptical. Karen looked flustered and confused. "I don't know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It looked like a gun." The officers exchanged a look, then turned back to me. "Sir, we're sorry for the confusion," one of them said, his tone apologetic. "It looks like there's been a misunderstanding. You can go ahead and pick up your tool." I felt shaky and unsettled, but relieved that the ordeal was over. I turned to Karen, who was standing off to the side, looking embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice soft. "I didn't mean to cause all of this. I thought I saw something dangerous." But I wasn't in the mood to forgive her just yet. "You could have gotten me killed," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "I'm filing a complaint against you for putting my life in danger." Karen's face fell as she realized the severity of the situation. "I understand," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." But I wasn't convinced. I was still reeling from the experience, and I knew that it would take a lot for me to forgive Karen. For now, all I wanted was to go inside and rest.
Wow, can you believe someone actually mistook a power drill for a gun? Definitely shows how crucial it is to stay chill and communicate clearly when things get intense. Thank goodness nobody got hurt, but man, that must have been a pretty terrifying experience. Karen seems like a real piece of work, huh? It's just too bad her actions ended up putting someone else's life on the line. Have you ever been in a situation where you were quick to judge someone without having all the facts? How did you handle the situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have a discussion. My 25M fiance's 24F best friend sent me proof of her cheating at her bachelorette party. Firstly, I'm sorry for any errors as I'm writing while exhausted and under the influence of alcohol. This should be fine for you as you're watching You're the Jerk, and we've already corrected all of his mistakes. Anyway, let's get back to the story. So, yeah, it's a pretty common story. I met her 5 years ago at uni, fell deeply in love and thought she was the love of my life. After 5 years of our relationship, she decided to cheat. We were not a perfect couple, but darn, we were close. Her family liked me, and while I don't really have one, I felt so welcomed in theirs. We had plans. The first one was me buying this big, now garbage house near the sea, building a family on our own, on my own. I proposed to her earlier this year, and I couldn't think of a better night than that. Why the heck did she have to throw everything away like that? Yesterday morning, I woke up with a big headache from my little party with the boys, and what a surprise when I saw that my fiance's best friend sent me not one but 5 darn videos. How naive I was thinking. Oh cool, they had fun. Must be some fun or embarrassing moments lol. To summarize the 5 videos, she was kissing at least 3 other guys, making out really passionately with one. I mean really passionately. Licking champagne off his body. And finally, she was lifted up into a room, and there were a lot of noises from behind the door. My friends are still with me, as dumbfounded as I am. I guess she slept most of yesterday because I had the first text last night and a lot of them and calls since this morning. I only asked her yesterday to tell me the truth, and she played like nothing happened. I just can't, I swear to God, it's crushing my mind. She's just begging on text for me to pick up, saying it's not what I think. How cliche, right? Even her best friend is trying and told me we need to talk. I picked up just once, told her I know about the guy, and bam, blank silence, then sobbing and crying, telling me to meet to talk and explain because it's not what it looks like before I hung up and turned off my phone. She even asked me who was the person that sent me the videos. Guys, I really thought I could have my own family. It was hard growing up in foster care. I guess I only have my bros and my job left. I guess I need some outside advice. Maybe it really wasn't what it looked like, but how can I believe that nonsense? Here's the OP's update, 4 days later. Hey there, I just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone who has reached out to me with kind messages and advice. It's been a rough few days, but I'm hanging in there. I gotta say, it's been heartwarming to see so much support from people I don't even know. You guys are awesome.
Now, I know some of you out there might be thinking, well, what about the people who insulted your fiancé? And trust me, I get it. Believe me, I was pretty fired up after I found out about her cheating too. But here's the thing. Throwing insults around isn't going to make anyone feel any better. So let's all try to be respectful, even when we're upset. As for my fiancé, I asked her to leave our shared home and go stay with her parents for a little while. It was a tough decision, but I think it's for the best right now. I told her she had until this afternoon to pack some stuff and get out of here, but I didn't ask her to take the car I got her, don't worry. So yeah, it's been a roller coaster of emotions lately. But I'm taking things one day at a time and I'm trying to keep my head up. She called me several times and begged for a chance to explain. The first time she called, she was crying and very emotional. She was trying to convey to me that she had not done anything wrong and that she was being framed. I was skeptical and asked her to explain further. She continued to call me, and on the third call, she was guilt-tripping me by saying that I was not believing her over someone I don't really know. She then went on to tell me that nothing happened in the room and that the kissing was all she did. I was still hesitant to believe her, but I decided to give her a chance to explain herself. At this point, I was at my breaking point, but I held back tears and asked her to tell me the truth, or I'd just disappear from her life. So there was more crying until she confessed that all she did was oral sex, on her and on him, detailed, but nothing more happened because she stopped. She swore that's all she did, but how can I be sure? I never saw her that panicked over something. She even proposed something like a free pass for me to cheat on her with anyone I'd like. This made me feel even more sick and disgusted. I hung up because, well, was there more to say? Through all the messages and calls from her friends and family, it was mostly messages telling me to pick up and talk with my fiancé. Like a lot of advice, I told a friend of mine to download the videos on his stuff, phone and computer, because I can't stand to have this on mine. I also picked up when her boyfriend called me, and basically, she explained that another girl invited her brother, who is a stripper, and his friends. That's why I already saw his face somewhere. She then took a solid 20 minutes telling me she betrayed her fiancé because she didn't deserve me. How I was too good, handsome, attractive, and wealthy for her. I asked her if my fiancé ever did something like that before, but she told me no. I asked her if drugs could have been used, and she told me no too, because she was still going after the cheating. She then offered to come to my place to support me, but I kindly declined. I need to be alone right now. The wedding has been canceled, but I haven't told the reason to the parents yet, and I turned off my phone all week. I took a break from work, and my days right now mostly consist of going to bars and getting so drunk I pass out. At least we had good laughs with the boys, even if I can hardly remember the last parts. Thanks again. I never thought this would blow up that fast. I'm kind of a very introverted person. I met my current friends. I only have 4, but I can't thank them enough. Through my fiancé. She was the popular type in uni, while all I did was study and play basketball. She was my first relationship, my first time, my first everything. Throwing up 5 years just like that. She keeps on texting me to meet and talk about this like an adult, sending me what she ate like nothing happened, and then trying to talk about our dreams together. That's so messed up, but fortunately there is a nice old and expensive bottle of whiskey waiting for me. The free pass to cheat reveals her mentality. While he wants to be in a monogamous relationship with her, her cheating is a big breach of their trust and intimacy, which makes him upset because he only wants to be with her. She believes that offering somebody else for him to sleep with makes things right, but it only makes sense if everybody in monogamous relationships secretly wants to cheat. She seems to assume that this is the case because it's the case with her. I'm super curious to hear what you think about this topic. What do you make of the cheating fiancé's offer of a free pass to cheat? It's really making me wonder about what it means to be faithful in a committed relationship. If you're up for it, would love to hear your perspective in the comments below. Am I the jerk for telling my wife she needs to take responsibility for her actions? My wife, 30 years old, and I, 35 years old, bought our house 5 years ago and it needs work, but time and money are always a constraint. Right now, my wife is not working while she goes back to school, and I'm working second shift as the sole earner. Since my wife is home more than me, she has been handling most of the work that's been done around the house, including dealing with contractors. She comes from a family of do-it-yourselfers who tend to shoot from the hip with projects, while I prefer to have a plan in place before we do any work. And the most recent projects that she's spearheaded have been, in my opinion, subpar. Some examples. Our privacy fence gate doesn't close right and she hasn't gotten the contractor to come to fix it for months. The internet line wasn't buried deeply enough by the contractors, and I think she should have sent them away when they didn't have the right equipment. She decided without my input to use a cleanser on our house before restaining it, and the cleanser left streaks in the wood that cannot be covered by the stain. We have a wooden sculpture in our yard that she did not clean, and it is dark and dirty and looks terrible. She doesn't see anything wrong with it. Most recently, we had gutter work done, and I wanted a gutter put on the back of our new shed. She forgot to tell the contractor where I wanted the downspout and he put it in the opposite corner, so now the water is just going to collect behind the shed, which is exactly what I wanted to avoid. She called me at work to give me this news, and I spent the rest of the day frustrated. When I got home, I asked what we were going to do about this, and she said something about fixing it ourselves. I told her that it would never be right if we fixed it ourselves, that I already paid for the work to be done right the first time, and we're just wasting money and time with needing to redo all these projects that she's been half-assing. I asked if she even cared about the quality of work that is being done on the house, and said that maybe she shouldn't be involved with any more projects on the house unless communication improves. She just sat in silence and slept on the couch without speaking to me. This morning, I asked if she was going to talk to me and she said, "I don't know." I was exasperated and asked if she could just tell me what is wrong, and she replied, "I'm scared of you." She told me she wished I had approached the issue by looking for a solution, and I told her that she just doesn't want to be accountable for her actions. She said she just wants us to be partners. I could be the jerk for how I went about telling her about my feelings, but I feel like there's no way for me to give her negative feedback without her freaking out. Am I the jerk for telling my wife that she needs to be accountable for her actions? OP left an update like 5 months later, but I want to read over some of the comments before we get to it. A commenter said the following: "Based on your own words, you responded in an accusatory tone. I told her that she just doesn't want to be accountable for her actions, right after she admitted she was scared of you. I highly doubt this is her feigning fear," as a different user speculated. After being barraged the night before, your wife gave constructive criticism on how she would prefer to discuss sensitive topics in the future. In a more partner-focused, kind, and solution-based way, you broached this entire subject with frustration and accused her of carelessness and pissing away money, seemingly without bringing up a communication issue or less drastic solutions at all. Instead, you jumped straight to suggesting that she should be removed from all projects. With this kind of angry and accusatory reaction, it's not at all crazy to think that she would be silent and afraid of you. It seems like it was just a way for you to blow off steam and shame her. Her request for you to communicate in a kind and constructive way is not ridiculous in the slightest, just as much as it's not ridiculous to want things in your house to be done well, or for her to communicate better. But words do matter, and how you wield them has consequences. Just remember what your true priority is here. Is it the project, or is it having a loving partnership with your wife? After you decide on these priorities, then you can work together on how to deal with the house projects. Or not work together at all. Clearly, OP is the jerk in this situation. Now here's what he said 5 months later. I posted about 5 months ago regarding an argument my wife and I had, and I was determined to be the one at fault. Recently someone commented on that post asking if my wife had left me yet, so I decided to provide an update. Many people recognized that the way I spoke with my wife was full of frustration and anger, which was unproductive, and, even more than that, scary for my wife. One comment that I just read pointed out that I was just venting and that my priority should be my partnership. We covered a lot of topics in the weeks following that incident. We had a couples therapy session to talk about strategies and communication. I saw one of my coworkers react in anger and frustration instead of taking the time to become calm, and realized from the outside, looking in, just how unproductive his behavior was. Then, my wife showed me a section of one of our self-help books called The 5 Personality Patterns, which my therapist had recommended a while back. We had been reading it together, but then we got busy and stopped. She picked it back up after our fight and read about the leaving pattern. She underlined several sections and read them to me, and I finally understood. I grew up in a house where my parents screamed and yelled at each other or picked fights in order to storm out of the house, and that's how I used to interpret my wife's silence, as a way to win the fight. In reality, when she became silent, she was terrified. She wasn't stonewalling me, trying to manipulate me to win the fight, or avoiding taking responsibility. She was so scared in that moment that she wasn't even in her body. She couldn't even speak. She was totally dissociated. She told me that even though she knows that how I was acting wasn't objectively scary, her threshold for shutting down is really low. Realizing how much I scared my wife broke my heart. The descriptions of dissociation in the book were terrifying to me. My wife is the sweetest person. I love her so much, and I never want her to experience what she experienced that day ever again. It changed my perspective completely. Since my realization, our relationship is better than ever. We laugh and tease each other playfully. We work on projects together, talk about chores and money, and even have had a couple of fights that we resolved quickly and lovingly. Our communication is better because we trust each other. My wife told me that she has never felt safer or more loved now. I won't say I'm glad the fight happened, but what I realized because of it has been a turning point in our marriage for the better. I always love seeing people rise above their "you're the jerk" status and take the steps to improve and become better. In this case, the "I'm scared of you" comment from his wife should have been the tipping point for original poster to realize he had gone too far. I'm glad that he eventually did, even though it took the internet community to make him see it, wishing both him and his wife the best. If you enjoyed today's video, be sure to subscribe for more videos. Check out the other videos on your screen right now. Any one of them. Now, do it. Click on a video. Alright, I'll be waiting for you.